They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't tell you is that blood can also drown you faster than any ocean ever could. My name is Luna Sutton, and for 28 years, I believed that family meant everything. I believed that love meant sacrifice, that loyalty meant silence, and that being a good daughter meant accepting whatever scraps of affection were thrown my way. I was wrong about all of it, and it took a piece of paper and a DNA test to show me just how deep the betrayal ran. I sat in the mahogany-paneled office of Arthur Vance, Esquire, on the 60th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper that pierced the morning fog like a glass needle. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Statue of Liberty standing sentinel in the harbor, her torch barely visible through the September haze. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be learning about my father's final wishes while staring at a symbol of freedom I'd never truly had. My mother, Catherine, sat to my right in a perfectly tailored black Tom Ford dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her grief was a performance art piece, complete with perfectly timed dabs at her dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Every gesture was calculated, every sigh rehearsed. She'd been preparing for this role since the day my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. My sister Chloe lounged in the leather chair to my left, her fingers dancing across her phone screen even as the lawyer cleared his throat to begin. She was probably updating her Instagram story for her 2 million followers, #grieving, #family-first, #blessed. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist caught the light as she typed, one of many gifts from our father that she'd flaunted while I'd worked 60-hour weeks at a nonprofit, too proud to ask for help. Arthur Vance was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same mahogany as his desk, all sharp angles and cold efficiency. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and opened the leather portfolio containing my father's will. Harrison Sutton, founder and CEO of Sutton Biogen, had built an empire in biotechnology that was worth $500 million. The man who'd missed every birthday, every graduation, every moment that mattered in my life had certainly been meticulous about planning what would happen to his money after he was gone. The reading began with the smaller bequests. Various charities received generous donations. Longtime employees at Sutton Biogen were remembered with bonuses and stock options. The housekeeper who'd raised me while my mother attended charity galas received a retirement fund that brought tears to her eyes when she was notified. Everyone who'd served my father in life was being rewarded in his death. Everyone except, it seemed, the daughter who'd never asked for anything. Catherine received the Park Avenue penthouse, a property worth $30 million, along with an investment portfolio that would keep her in designer dresses and champagne lunches for the rest of her life. She accepted this news with a gracious nod, as if she'd expected nothing less. Chloe was bequeathed the house in the Hamptons, where we'd spent exactly 3 summers as a family before my parents decided that family vacations were too much effort. She also received a trust fund worth $20 million, accessible immediately. Then Vance turned to me. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, like he was bracing for impact. I straightened in my chair, preparing myself for whatever insulting pittance my father had decided I deserved. A small trust fund, perhaps, maybe shares in the company that I couldn't sell. Some token gesture to acknowledge that I existed without actually giving me anything of real value. To my daughter Luna, Vance read, his voice steady and emotionless. I leave 51% controlling interest in Sutton Biogen and all remaining liquid assets, currently valued at approximately $200 million. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Chloe's phone clattered to the floor. Catherine's hand froze halfway to her mouth. I felt the blood drain from my face as the words registered. Controlling interest. 200 million. The numbers didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. Vance continued reading, and that's when the bomb truly detonated. These assets are to be transferred upon completion of one condition. A DNA test confirming paternity must be conducted at a laboratory of my choosing, with results to be verified by my estate's medical advisors. The words hung in the air like poison gas. A DNA test. After 28 years, after a lifetime of being treated like an afterthought, my father wanted to confirm I was actually his daughter before giving me the majority of his fortune. The humiliation was a physical thing, burning through my chest and into my throat. I couldn't look at my mother. I couldn't look at anyone. Chloe recovered first, and her laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. Oh my God, poor Luna. Dad always did have a twisted sense of humor. She bent to retrieve her phone, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I mean, obviously it's just a formality. Right, Mom? Catherine's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. There must be some mistake, she whispered, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Harrison wouldn't. This isn't... The will is very clear, Vance interrupted, sliding a document across the desk toward me. The test must be conducted within 30 days of the reading of the will. If you choose not to take the test, or if the results are negative, the controlling interest in Sutton Biogen will be divided equally between Mrs. Sutton and Miss Chloe Sutton, with your portion being limited to a trust fund of $1 million. $1 million. In my family's world, that was pocket change. It was shut-up money, go-away money. It was exactly what you'd give someone you wanted to disappear. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. I needed air. I needed to get out of this room with its leather and mahogany and suffocating implications. I need a moment. I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my head. Luna, wait. Catherine started, reaching for my arm, but I pulled away. Don't. The word came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care. I couldn't care. Not right now. I made it to the hallway before Chloe caught up with me. The corridor was empty except for abstract art that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime at my nonprofit job. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin through my blazer. Listen to me, you little bookworm, she hissed, all pretense of sympathy gone. You're not going to take that test. You're going to walk back in there, decline the condition, take your $1 million, and disappear like you should have done years ago. I tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. Let go of me, Chloe. Do you have any idea what this will do to us? To our family's reputation? If you take that test, if people find out Dad doubted you were his, we'll be the laughingstock of New York society. Every gossip blog, every society page will be dissecting our family. Is that what you want? I looked at my sister then, really looked at her. The perfect blonde highlights, the subtle surgical enhancements, the designer everything. She was everything our mother had wanted in a daughter. Everything I'd never been. Pretty, social, willing to play the game. She'd never worked a day in her life, had never wanted for anything, and here she was, terrified that I might actually get something that belonged to me. What I want, I said slowly, is to know why our father felt the need to put that condition in his will. What I want is the truth. And what I want right now is for you to get your hands off me before I scream so loud that every person on this floor comes running. She released me, but didn't step back. You'll regret this, she said, her voice low and dangerous. I'll make sure of it. There won't be a door in this city that doesn't slam in your face. Every connection you have, every opportunity you might get, I'll destroy it all. You mean you'll try to destroy the nothing I already have? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. Go ahead, Chloe. Take away my one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Ruin my career at a nonprofit that barely pays me enough to live. Destroy the social life I don't have because I've spent my entire adult life trying to earn a family's love that was never going to come. You can't take what doesn't exist. I left her standing in the hallway and went back into the office. Catherine and Vance were speaking in low voices, but they stopped when I entered. I sat down, picked up the document about the DNA test, and read through it carefully. The laboratory was reputable, one of the best in the city. The test would be supervised by multiple parties. The results would be legally binding. I'll take the test, I said, looking directly at Vance. Schedule it for as soon as possible. Catherine made a sound like a wounded animal. Luna, please. Let's discuss this at home, as a family. Family? I turned to look at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't try to hide my anger. What family? The one where Dad worked 18-hour days to avoid coming home? The one where you were too busy with your charities and galas to notice I existed? The one where Chloe got a car for her 16th birthday while I got a card that Dad's secretary signed for him? That family? You're being dramatic, Chloe said, having returned to the room. We all had the same childhood. No, I said quietly. We didn't. You had parents. I had DNA donors who happened to live in the same house. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of legal documents and barely concealed hostility. Vance explained that the estate would be frozen until the DNA test results were confirmed. No one could access any of the major assets, though Catherine and Chloe's living expenses would be covered by a temporary allowance. It was enough to maintain their lifestyle for a month, maybe 2 if they were careful. Watching them realize they'd have to budget for the first time in their lives was almost worth the humiliation of the entire situation. As we left the building, Catherine tried one more time. Luna, darling, please come home with us. We need to talk about this as a family, about what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone, or what's best for you and Chloe? I asked. She had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. This is going to destroy us. You know that, don't you? The scandal, the gossip. Is that really what you want? To hurt your family like this? My family? I laughed, and several people on the sidewalk turned to look. You mean the family that's terrified I might actually be part of it? No, Catherine. I'm done pretending we're something we're not. I'll take the test, and we'll all deal with the consequences. I hailed a cab, leaving them standing on the sidewalk in their designer morning clothes, and gave the driver my address in Brooklyn. As Manhattan dissolved into Brooklyn through the cab window, I thought about the last time I'd seen my father alive. It had been 2 weeks before his death, in his hospital room at Mount Sinai. He'd been sleeping, or pretending to sleep, while I sat in the uncomfortable visitor's chair reading quarterly reports from Sutton Biogen that I'd pulled from public records. I'd been trying to understand him through his work, since I'd never been able to understand him as a father. The company was brilliant, innovative, pushing the boundaries of genetic therapy and personalized medicine. It was everything Harrison Sutton had been. Cold, efficient, and absolutely revolutionary. I'd wondered then if he'd ever loved anything besides his work. Now, with the DNA test hanging over my head, I wondered if he'd ever even considered me his at all. My apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from the Park Avenue penthouse where I'd grown up. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchen so small you couldn't open the oven and the dishwasher at the same time. But it was mine, paid for with my own money from my own job, and no one could take it away from me. Or so I'd thought until I checked my phone and saw 23 missed calls from various family lawyers and financial advisors, all presumably wanting to discuss my options regarding the will. I ignored them all and called the one person I knew would give me honest advice without judgment. Maya Chen had been my best friend since college and was now a cybersecurity expert at a tech firm that had tried to poach employees from Sutton Biogen more than once. She answered on the second ring. "Luna, I saw the news about your dad. I'm so sorry. How are you holding up?" "Can you come over?" I asked, not trusting myself to say more over the phone. "Give me 20 minutes, she said without hesitation. She made it in 15, arriving with Thai food and a bottle of wine that was definitely outside her usual budget. I told her everything while we sat on my secondhand couch, eating pad thai straight from the containers. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more incredulous with each detail. "A DNA test?" she finally said when I'd finished. "After 28 years, he wants a DNA test?" "That's the condition," I confirmed, taking a larger sip of wine than was probably wise. Maya was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming against her knee in the way they did when she was processing complex information. "Luna, this doesn't make sense. Why would he leave you everything but require a DNA test? If he didn't think you were his, why leave you anything at all?" "Maybe he wanted to humiliate me one last time," I suggested, though even as I said it, it didn't feel right. My father had been cold and distant, but he'd never been deliberately cruel. Or maybe, Maya said slowly, he knew something, or suspected something. Think about it. He could have just written you out of the will entirely if he didn't think you were his daughter. Instead, he set up a condition that would prove it one way or another. It's like he wanted the truth to come out. But why not just do the test while he was alive? Maybe he couldn't face it, or maybe... She paused, her eyes lighting up the way they did when she was about to hack into something she shouldn't. "Maybe he did." "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if your father already knew the answer? What if this whole thing isn't about finding out the truth but about revealing it, in a way that no one could dispute or cover up?" The thought sent a chill down my spine. "You think he knew I wasn't his daughter? Or maybe he knew you were, and someone else wasn't." Maya's eyes widened. "Luna, what if this isn't about you at all? What if you're just the mechanism to expose something else?" I thought about Chloe's immediate panic, Catherine's desperate attempts to stop me from taking the test. They weren't acting like people who were confident in the outcome. They were acting like people with something to hide. "I need to know more about my father's movements before he died," I said. "His appointments, his meetings, anything that might explain why he did this." Maya smiled, and it was the smile of someone about to do something slightly illegal in the name of friendship. "Leave that to me. But Luna, you need to be careful. If we're right, if there's more to this than just a paternity test, then someone has a lot to lose. And people do dangerous things when they're cornered." She left a few hours later, promising to dig into my father's digital footprint. I tried to sleep but couldn't stop thinking about the will, the test, the look on my mother's face when Vance had read the condition. It wasn't just shock or embarrassment, it was fear. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing with notifications. Chloe had posted a series of Instagram stories overnight, each one more passive-aggressive than the last. Photos of her and Catherine from various charity events over the years, all with captions about real family and blood loyalty. The comments were already filling with speculation about what had happened. Chloe's followers sensing drama like sharks sensing blood in the water. Then came the text from Catherine. "Come to the penthouse at noon. We need to discuss this situation before it gets out of hand." I almost ignored it, but Maya had texted too. "Found something. Meet me at the office first. Trust me, you need to see this before you see your family." Maya's office was in a converted warehouse in Dumbo, all exposed brick and modern furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost a fortune. She pulled me into a conference room and locked the door behind us, her laptop already open on the table. "Your father was a very interesting man," she began, pulling up a series of documents on the screen. "In the last 6 months of his life, he hired a private investigator. A good one, too. Former FBI, specializes in financial fraud and family law. He hired a private investigator while he was dying of cancer. Not just any investigator. This guy, Marcus Webb. He's the kind you hire when you want to destroy someone legally. I found the payments in an offshore account your father set up. Monthly retainers of $50,000, plus expenses." "What was he investigating?" Maya pulled up another document, this one a report with photos attached. "Your mother, specifically your mother's relationship with a doctor." Jean-Luc Dubois, a French biochemist who worked at Mount Sinai from 1994 to 1997. I stared at the photos. They were old, slightly grainy, but clear enough. My mother, younger, laughing at a restaurant with a handsome man with dark hair and intelligent eyes. Another of them walking in Central Park. A third of them entering a hotel together. When was this? I asked, though I was already doing the math in my head. 1995 to 1996, Maya confirmed. Chloe was born in August 1996. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You think, Chloe. I think your father suspected it. Look at this. She pulled up another document, this one from a genetics testing company. 3 months ago, your father submitted a DNA sample to a private genetics lab. Not for a paternity test, but for a full genetic workup. He was looking for inherited genetic markers related to certain conditions. What kind of conditions? The kind that would be passed from father to child, specific markers that he would have passed on if he was actually the biological father. Luna, I cross-referenced his genetic profile with published research. Your father had a rare genetic variant that causes a very specific type of color blindness. It's inherited dominantly, meaning any child of his would have it. I have that, I said quietly. I've always had trouble distinguishing between certain shades of blue and green. My optometrist said it was unusual in women. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. Maya pulled up Chloe's Instagram, specifically a post from last year where she was bragging about her perfect vision after a comprehensive eye exam. No color blindness, perfect color perception. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I'd never imagined. My father knew Chloe wasn't his. I think he suspected it for a while, but only confirmed it near the end. And I think, Maya said carefully, he set up his will to expose the truth in a way that couldn't be covered up or ignored. If you take that DNA test, it's not just going to prove you're his daughter. It's going to prove that Chloe isn't. I sat back in the chair, my mind reeling. All those years of being treated like an outsider, of watching Chloe get everything while I got nothing, of feeling like I didn't belong in my own family. Was it because I reminded my mother of her husband, while Chloe reminded her of her lover? Was it guilt that made her push me away, or resentment that I was the one who actually belonged? There's more, Maya said gently. I found communications between your mother and Dr. Dubois. He's still alive, living in Paris. They've been in contact all these years. She's been sending him money, Luna. Regular payments from an account your father didn't know about. She's been paying him for what? To stay away, would be my guess. To keep quiet about Chloe. Maya closed the laptop. Luna, you need to be very careful how you handle this. Your mother and Chloe have everything to lose if this comes out. The inheritance, their social standing, everything. I thought about Chloe's threat in the hallway, her desperation to stop me from taking the test. She knew, maybe not the details, but she knew something was wrong. And Catherine, my mother, had been living this lie for 28 years, raising her lover's child while pushing away her husband's daughter. I have to go, I said, standing up. They're expecting me at the penthouse. Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, but stay by your phone, if something happens. I'll have 911 on speed dial, Maya promised. The doorman at the Park Avenue building gave me a sympathetic look as I entered, the kind reserved for grieving family members. If only he knew that the grief I was feeling had nothing to do with my father's death, and everything to do with the death of any illusions I'd had about my family. The penthouse was exactly as it had always been. Cold, modern, and impeccably decorated by someone who'd never actually lived there. The living room looked like a museum exhibit on how rich people were supposed to live. All white furniture and abstract art that cost more than most people's houses. Catherine and Chloe were waiting for me, sitting on opposite ends of the white leather sofa like bookends. Catherine had traded her morning clothes for a cream-colored suit that made her look like she was heading to a board meeting rather than a family discussion. Chloe was in designer jeans and a silk blouse, her phone nowhere to be seen for once. They both looked up when I entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Luna. Catherine began, standing up. Thank you for coming. Would you like some tea, coffee? I'm fine, I said, not moving from the doorway. What did you want to discuss? Catherine and Chloe exchanged glances, one of those wordless communications that had always excluded me. We wanted to make you an offer, Catherine said finally, a compromise that works for everyone. I'm listening. Chloe stood up, her hands clasped in front of her like she was about to give a presentation. We'll give you $10 million from our inheritances. 5 from me, 5 from Mom. You don't take the test, you sign away any claim to Sutton Biogen, and everyone walks away happy. $10 million, I repeated. That's your offer? It's more than fair, Catherine said quickly. More than you'd ever need. You could quit that nonprofit job, travel, do whatever you want. And all I have to do is pretend I'm not Harrison Sutton's daughter? All you have to do, Chloe said, her voice harder now, is avoid destroying this family for your own selfish reasons. I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. My selfish reasons? I'm not the one who's been living a lie for 28 years. Catherine went very still. What are you talking about? Dr. Jean-Luc Dubois, I said, watching her face drain of color. Ring any bells, Mother? The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe looked between us, confusion replacing her earlier confidence. Who is Jean-Luc Dubois? Nobody, Catherine said quickly, too quickly. Luna, I don't know what you think you know, but I know that he worked at Mount Sinai from 1994 to 1997. I know that you had an affair with him. I know that you've been sending him money for years. I turned to look at Chloe. And I know that Dad suspected you weren't his biological daughter. Chloe's face went through a series of expressions so quickly it would have been comical under different circumstances. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, a dawning horror as she turned to look at Catherine. Mom? Her voice was small, almost childlike. What is she talking about? Catherine sank back onto the couch, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. It was a mistake, she whispered. A moment of weakness. Your father was never home, always at the lab, and Jean-Luc he was everything Harrison wasn't. Warm. Attentive. Present. You cheated on Dad? Chloe's voice was rising, hysteria creeping in. And you never thought to mention that I might not be his daughter? You are his daughter, Catherine insisted, but even she didn't sound convinced. In every way that matters, you're his daughter. He raised you. He loved you. He loved me? Chloe laughed bitterly. He barely knew I existed. The only person he ever really saw was his precious company. She turned to me, and for the first time in our lives, I saw real vulnerability in her eyes. But at least I thought I was his blood. At least I thought I had that. We don't know anything for certain, Catherine said desperately, not unless we do the tests. Then let's do them, I said. Both of us. Settle this once and for all. No, Catherine stood up, her hands shaking. No, we're not doing this. Luna, please, I'm begging you, don't destroy your sister's life over money. This isn't about money, I said, and I meant it. This is about the truth. This is about 28 years of being treated like an interloper in my own family. This is about finally understanding why my own mother could barely look at me while she showered affection on Chloe. That's not I never. You did, I interrupted. Every day, in 1,000 small ways. And now I know why. I was Harrison's daughter, the reminder of the marriage you resented. Chloe was Jean-Luc's daughter, the reminder of the passion you chose. Chloe had gone silent, staring at Catherine with an expression I'd never seen before. It was like watching someone realize their entire life had been built on a foundation of sand. Get out, Catherine said quietly. Both of you. I need to think. Mom, Chloe started. Get out, Catherine screamed, and it was so unexpected, so unlike her usual controlled demeanor, that both Chloe and I took a step back. I left first, Chloe following me to the elevator. We rode down in silence, both lost in our own thoughts. It wasn't until we reached the lobby that she spoke. Did you know? She asked. Before the will, did you know? No, I admitted. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined this. She laughed, but it was hollow. All my life, I thought I was special. The pretty one, the social one, the one who inherited Dad's business sense. Turns out I inherited nothing from him at all. You inherited $250 million from him, I pointed out. If we both refuse the DNA test. She looked at me sharply. Is that what you want? To split it all evenly and pretend none of this happened? No, I said simply. I want the truth. Don't you? She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, I do. The DNA tests were scheduled for 3 days later at a private medical facility on the Upper East Side. Chloe and I hadn't spoken since that day at the penthouse, but she showed up at the appointment, looking pale but determined. Catherine wasn't there. The process was simple. A cheek swab, some paperwork, and then we were told the results would be available in 48 hours. Vance had arranged for the results to be revealed at his office, with all parties present. It felt like waiting for an execution. Maya stayed with me during those 2 days, making sure I ate, slept, and didn't spiral into anxiety. She also continued her digital investigation, uncovering more details about my father's final months. He'd changed his will 6 times, each version more complex than the last, as if he'd been trying to find the perfect way to reveal the truth without destroying everyone in the process. He loved you. Maya said the night before the results were due. In his own way, he loved you. This whole thing, it's like he was trying to give you what you deserved while also making sure the truth came out. He could have just told me, I said, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom. Could he? Would you have believed him? Would anyone? This way, with legal documents and scientific proof, there's no room for doubt or denial. The next morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress that was professional without trying too hard. I wanted to look like what I was, Harrison Sutton's daughter, ready to claim her inheritance. Vance's office was crowded this time. Catherine was there, looking haggard despite her perfect makeup. Chloe sat apart from her, having apparently not forgiven the decades of deception. There were also several lawyers I didn't recognize, presumably representing various interests in the estate. Vance cleared his throat and opened the folder containing the results. I have here the DNA analysis for both Luna Sutton and Chloe Sutton, compared against the verified sample from Harrison Sutton. He paused, looking at each of us in turn. Would anyone like to make any statements before I read the results? Just read them, Chloe said tersely. Vance nodded and lifted the first paper. Luna Sutton and Harrison Sutton. Probability of paternity. 99.97%. The tested individuals are confirmed to be biological father and daughter. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't even realized was there. I was Harrison Sutton's daughter. Despite everything, despite the distance and the coldness and the neglect, I was his. Vance lifted the second paper. Chloe Sutton and Harrison Sutton. Probability of paternity. 0%. The tested individuals are not biologically related. The sound Chloe made was small, wounded, like an animal that had been struck. Catherine reached for her, but Chloe pulled away violently. Don't touch me, she snarled. Don't you dare touch me. Chloe, please. 28 years, Chloe said, her voice rising. 28 years of lies. Did he know? Did Dad know? He suspected, I said quietly. Near the end, he had his own tests done. Chloe turned to look at me, and her face was a masterpiece of rage and pain. You did this. You couldn't just let it go, could you? You had to destroy everything. I didn't do anything except take a test that our father required, I replied. The lies, the deception, that was all here before I ever opened that will. In light of these results, Vance interrupted, the terms of Harrison Sutton's will are clear. Luna Sutton inherits 51% controlling interest in Sutton Biogen and all liquid assets as specified. Chloe Sutton's inheritance is nullified as per the clause regarding fraudulent claims of paternity. Fraudulent claims? Chloe stood up so fast her chair fell backward. I didn't claim anything. I was a child. I was lied to my entire life. The will contains a provision, Vance explained, not unkindly, that any inheritance based on false claims of biological relationship would be voided. However, there is a trust fund of $1 million set aside for you, Miss Sutton, or rather, Miss Dubois, as that would be your legal surname. The name hit Chloe like a slap. She turned to Catherine, who was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. You knew. You knew all along, and you let me believe. How could you? I wanted to protect you, Catherine sobbed. I wanted you to have everything. To be a Sutton, to have the life you deserved. The life I deserved? Or the life you wanted to live through me? Chloe grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. I can't be here. I can't look at any of you. She left, slamming the door behind her. Catherine started to follow, but I stopped her with a word. Don't. She turned to look at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw her. Not the polished society wife, not the distant mother, but the woman who'd made a choice 28 years ago and had been paying for it ever since. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice small. With the company? With the money? I'm going to run it, I said simply. I'm going to take everything Dad built and make it better, and you're going to leave New York. What? You heard me. Take your inheritance and go. Paris, maybe. I hear Dr. Dubois is still there. But you don't get to stay here and pretend none of this happened. You don't get to keep playing the grieving widow at charity galas while the truth about what you did spreads through every social circle in Manhattan. You're threatening me? I'm giving you a choice. Leave quietly, with your dignity and your money intact, or stay and watch as I use every resource at my disposal to make sure everyone knows exactly who Catherine Sutton really island. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw her calculating, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. I'll be gone within the month. 2 weeks, I countered. And you don't contact Chloe unless she reaches out first. She deserves the space to process this without your manipulation. Catherine gathered her things with as much dignity as she could muster. At the door, she paused. I did love you, you know, in my way. Your way wasn't enough, I replied, and turned away so I wouldn't have to watch her leave. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal documents, board meetings, and corporate transitions. The board of directors at Sutton Biogen was shocked to discover that Harrison had been grooming me from afar, that all those years I'd thought he was ignoring me, he'd been watching my career, reading my published papers on bioethics, even anonymously funding the nonprofit where I worked. Marcus Webb, the private investigator my father had hired, reached out to me a week after the DNA results were revealed. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Chelsea, where he handed me a thick folder. Your father wanted you to have this, he said, his weathered face kind but serious. He hired me not just to investigate your mother, but to document your life. Every achievement, every struggle, every moment that mattered. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were photos of me at various stages of my life, graduating summa cum laude from Columbia, receiving an award for my work at the nonprofit, helping at a homeless shelter on Christmas Eve instead of attending the family party. There were copies of every paper I'd published, every letter of recommendation written about me, every positive performance review. He was proud of you, Webb said quietly. He didn't know how to show it, but he was so proud of the woman you became without his help. He used to say you were the only honest thing in his life. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to cry, the kind of deep, cathartic tears I'd never allowed myself before. When I returned, Webb had ordered me a fresh coffee and a slice of chocolate cake. "There's more," he said. "Your father knew he'd failed you as a parent. The will, the DNA test, it was his way of making things right. He knew it would expose your mother's deception, but more importantly, he knew it would finally give you the position you deserved. Not just the money, but the power to shape the company's future. Why didn't he just tell me the truth himself?" "He tried. The last time you visited him in the hospital, he was awake. He heard everything you said about the company, your ideas for new research directions, your concerns about ethical practices. He wanted to tell you then, but he was a coward. His words, not mine. He said he'd been a coward your whole life when it came to emotional things, and he didn't deserve to be forgiven for it." Webb left me with the folder and a business card. "If you ever need anything," he said, "investigating or otherwise, call me. Your father paid me for a lifetime of service to you." Chloe resurfaced 3 weeks after the DNA results were revealed. She called me from a blocked number at 2 a.m, drunk and crying. "I don't know who I am," she slurred. "My whole life was a lie. Everything I thought I was, everything I thought I had, it's all gone." "Where are you?" I asked, already grabbing my keys. "Some bar in the East Village. I don't know which one." It took me 2 hours to find her, checking every dive bar in the area until I spotted her at a place called the Stumble Inn, slumped over the bar with mascara streaking down her face. The bartender looked relieved when I identified myself as her sister. "Thank God," he said. "She's been here for hours, crying and buying rounds for strangers." I was about to call the cops. I paid her tab, which was astronomical, and half-carried her to my car. She mumbled apologies and accusations in equal measure during the drive to my apartment. I got her inside, forced her to drink water and take aspirin, and put her to bed in my room while I took the couch. She was still there when I woke up the next morning, sitting at my tiny kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking small and lost in my borrowed pajamas. "I'm nobody," she said without preamble. "Chloe Dubois, daughter of nobody, worth nothing." "That's not true," I said, sitting down across from her. "You're still you. Your DNA doesn't change who you are." "Doesn't it? My entire life was built on being a Sutton. The connections, the opportunities, the identity. Without that, what am I? A pretty face with a useless art history degree and no actual skills?" "You're 28 years old," I pointed out. "You have time to figure out who you want to be." She laughed bitterly. "With what money? The $1 million trust fund? Do you know how fast that will disappear in New York? Rent alone will eat through it in a few years." "Then don't stay in New York." She looked at me sharply. "Easy for you to say. You won. You got everything." "I got what I was owed," I corrected, "and I paid for it with 28 years of emotional neglect and psychological abuse." "You want to trade places? You want to have the money but know that your own mother could barely stand to look at you because you reminded her of her obligations instead of her choices?" Chloe was quiet for a long moment. "She really did that to you?" "Every day. The difference in how she treated us wasn't just favoritism, it was punishment. I was being punished for existing, for being proof that she was married to a man she didn't love. And I was the proof that she'd found love elsewhere." Chloe set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "God, we're both so fucked up." "Yeah," I agreed, "we are." We sat in silence for a while, two sisters who'd never really been sisters, trying to figure out what came next. "I'm leaving New York," Chloe said finally. "I can't stay here. Everyone knows now. The gossip blogs, the society pages, they're all calling me the bastard heiress. Did you see the page 6 headline? Sutton scandal, $1 billion baby daddy drama. It's humiliating." "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Somewhere no one knows me. Somewhere I can figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be the perfect society daughter." She paused. "Maybe I'll actually do something useful with my life for once." "The $1 million could help with that," I suggested. "It's enough to go back to school, start a business, invest in something meaningful." "Maybe." She stood up, gathering her things. "I should go. I need to pack, figure out logistics." "Chloe," I called as she reached the door. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for revealing the truth, but for how it all happened. You didn't deserve to find out this way." She looked back at me, and for the first time in our lives, her smile seemed genuine. You know what the really sick part is? I'm almost relieved. I spent my whole life trying to live up to being Harrison Sutton's daughter, and I was never good enough. Now I know why. I was trying to be something I literally couldn't be. After she left, I sat in my apartment thinking about family, about blood, about the lies we tell ourselves and each other. My phone buzzed with a text from Arthur Vance, reminding me about the board meeting the next day where I'd officially take control of Sutton Biogen. The meeting was held in the same conference room where my father had built his empire, 40 floors above Manhattan, with windows overlooking the city he'd conquered. The board members, all men in their 50s and 60s who'd known my father for decades, looked at me with barely concealed skepticism. "Miss Sutton," the chairman began, "while we respect Harrison's wishes, you must understand that running a biotechnology company requires extensive experience and knowledge that you simply don't possess." "You're right," I said, enjoying the surprise on their faces. "I don't have experience running a biotech company. But I do have a master's degree in bioethics, 5 years of experience working with healthcare nonprofits, and a deep understanding of the ethical implications of genetic research that this company has been ignoring for years." "Ethical implications?" another board member scoffed. "We're in the business of making money, not moral judgments." "And that's why Sutton Biogen has been losing market share to companies that understand consumers care about more than just profit," I countered. "Our competitors are investing in transparent research practices, ethical gene therapy development, and accessible healthcare solutions. Meanwhile, we're still operating like it's 1995, prioritizing profits over people." "Your father never—" "My father is dead," I interrupted, "and he left me in charge for a reason. He knew the company needed to evolve, and he knew I was the one to make that happen. Now, you can work with me to transform Sutton Biogen into a company that leads with innovation and integrity, or you can resign and watch from the sidelines as I do it without you." It took 3 hours of heated debate, but by the end of the meeting, I had their grudging cooperation. 3 board members resigned on the spot, which was fine by me. I already had replacements in mind, scientists and ethicists who shared my vision for what Sutton Biogen could become. Maya helped me transition into my new role, using her connections in the tech world to introduce me to potential partners and investors who were excited about the company's new direction. We developed a 5-year plan that included making certain life-saving medications available at cost to low-income patients, investing in rare disease research that other companies ignored because it wasn't profitable enough, and implementing strict ethical guidelines for all genetic research. The business press had a field day with the story. "Sutton heiress takes the helm. Can an idealist run a billion-dollar company?" Read one headline. Another declared, "From nonprofit to CEO, Luna Sutton's unlikely rise to power." They all mentioned the scandal, of course, the DNA test that had exposed 28 years of deception. But gradually, the focus shifted from the drama to the work. 6 months after taking control, I was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine under the headline, "The Ethical Revolutionary. How Luna Sutton is Transforming Biotech." The article detailed our new initiatives, including a groundbreaking gene therapy treatment for a rare childhood disease that we were providing at cost, despite the potential for massive profits. Catherine kept her promise and left New York within 2 weeks of the DNA reveal. The last I heard, she was living in a modest apartment in Paris, presumably near Dr. Dubois, though she had the good sense not to make their reunion public. She sent me one email, 6 months after she left, containing just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Chloe moved to Portland, of all places, where she enrolled in nursing school. She sent me occasional updates, photos of herself in scrubs looking exhausted but satisfied. "Turns out I'm actually good at taking care of people when I'm not too busy taking selfies," she wrote in one message. Who knew? The $1 million trust fund was enough to cover her education and living expenses while she rebuilt her life from scratch. The penthouse on Park Avenue was sold to a tech entrepreneur who promised to actually live in it rather than use it as a status symbol. I used part of the proceeds to establish the Harrison Sutton Foundation for Genetic Research Ethics, which provided grants to researchers working on accessible healthcare solutions. I kept my apartment in Brooklyn for 6 months before finally moving to a larger place closer to the Sutton Biogen offices. Nothing as ostentatious as the penthouse, just a comfortable 2-bedroom in a converted warehouse in Tribeca. I turned the 2nd bedroom into a home office where I could work on the company's transformation without the formal pressure of the corporate environment. One evening, about a year after the DNA test changed everything, I was working late at the office when a security guard knocked on my door. "Miss Sutton? There's someone here to see you," says his family. My heart stopped for a moment, wondering if Catherine had returned or if Chloe had come back to New York. But the man who entered my office was neither of them. He was in his 60s, with graying hair and those intelligent eyes I'd seen in old photographs. "Dr. Dubois," I said, standing up slowly. "Miss Sutton." His accent was still strong after all these years. "I hope I'm not intruding." "What are you doing here?" "I came to apologize, and to give you this." He placed an envelope on my desk. "It's from your father. He wrote it many years ago and asked me to deliver it if the truth ever came out." I stared at the envelope, my father's handwriting visible on the front. Just my name, Luna. "He knew?" I asked. "About you and my mother?" He suspected. "We worked together briefly when it happened. Years later, he reached out to me, asked me directly about Chloe. I told him the truth. I thought he would destroy me, but instead, he just seemed sad. He said he had one daughter he couldn't love and another he didn't know how to love. Why didn't he do anything about it? Because he was a proud man who couldn't bear the scandal, and because, I think, he genuinely cared for Chloe, even knowing she wasn't his, but he couldn't pretend with you. You were too much like him, too smart, too driven. You reminded him of everything he was and everything he'd failed to be as a father." Dr. Dubois left shortly after, and I sat alone in my office with the letter. It took me an hour to work up the courage to open it. "Luna," it began, "if you're reading this, then I'm dead and the truth is out. I know you must hate me, and you have every right to. I failed you in every way a father can fail a daughter. I let my pride and my cowardice rob you of the family you deserved. I knew the truth about Chloe from the time she was 5. I saw it in her face, in her mannerisms, in the way she laughed. She was nothing like me, and everything like the man your mother had loved. I should have confronted it then, but I was afraid. Afraid of the scandal, afraid of losing the facade of a perfect family, afraid of being alone. So I threw myself into my work and pretended not to see what was right in front of me. I treated Chloe with distant affection, the kind reserved for other people's children. And you I could barely look at because you were the proof that I had failed as a husband, failed to keep your mother's love, failed to create a family worth staying faithful to. That's not your fault. None of it was ever your fault. You were the best thing I ever created, and I was too much of a fool to see it until it was too late. Every achievement of yours that I learned about secondhand, every moment of your life I missed, every time you needed a father and I wasn't there, these are my greatest regrets. The will, the DNA test, the inheritance, it's all my cowardly way of trying to make things right. I knew it would hurt people, but I also knew it would finally give you the truth and the power you deserved. Sutton Biogen is yours, because you're the only one who truly carries my legacy, not just in DNA but in spirit. You have my drive, my intelligence, and thankfully, your own moral compass that far exceeds mine. I don't ask for your forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that in my broken, inadequate way, I did love you. I just never learned how to show it until it was too late. Live the life I was too afraid to live. Be brave where I was cowardly. Love openly where I loved in secret. And know that wherever I am, I'm finally truly proud to be your father, Harrison Sutton. I read the letter 3 times before the tears came. Then I sat in my father's old office, now mine, and cried for the family we could have been, for the years we'd lost, and for the complicated, imperfect love that had survived despite everything. The next morning, I called a meeting with the entire company. Standing in front of 500 employees, I talked about the future of Sutton Biogen, about our mission to make genetic medicine accessible and ethical, about the legacy we were building together. My father built this company on brilliance and ambition, I said, but we're going to build its future on those same qualities plus something more, compassion. We're not just creating treatments, we're creating hope. We're not just serving shareholders, we're serving humanity. The applause was genuine, enthusiastic. These people, my people now, were ready for change. 2 years have passed since that DNA test changed everything. Sutton Biogen is now valued at twice what it was when I took over, proof that doing the right thing and doing good business aren't mutually exclusive. We've launched 3 new treatments for rare diseases, established clinics in underserved communities, and became the first major biotech company to cap executive salaries at a reasonable multiple of the median employee wage. Chloe graduated from nursing school last month. I attended her graduation, sitting in the audience with strangers because Catherine, respecting the boundaries I'd set, stayed away. Chloe looked radiant in her cap and gown, finally proud of something she'd earned rather than inherited. She works in a pediatric ward now and sends me videos of her young patients who don't care that she's not a Sutton by blood. Catherine remains in Paris. We don't speak, but I know through various sources that she's living quietly, volunteering at a local hospital where Dr. Dubois still works. Perhaps she's finding redemption in her own way, or perhaps she's just biding her time. Either way, she's no longer my concern. Maya, my constant friend through all of this, is now my chief technology officer, helping to modernize Sutton Biogen's research infrastructure. She jokes that she's the only person who knew me when I was nobody and still treats me the same now that I'm somebody. You were never nobody. She told me recently, you were just waiting for the world to catch up to who you already were. I am Luna Sutton, daughter of Harrison Sutton, CEO of Sutton Biogen. The DNA test that was meant to humiliate became my liberation. The inheritance meant to divide became the catalyst for finding our own paths. The truth meant to destroy became the foundation for rebuilding. This is my story, and it's just beginning.